Hello, my dear class 7 students, welcoming you all back to our English class with the continuation of fire, friend and foe. In the previous class, we have learned some things about fire and what are the things that are required for fire. We have learned all those things, and we have also touched a little bit on how early men discovered fire. Though it's not literally a part of our lesson, we have seen that early men, with the discovery of fire, they began to lead a settled life because they found it to be very useful. And in this lesson again, we know that I want to remind you once again that to make fire, oxygen, fuel and heat is required, right? And we can make fire only at the flash point. The flash point is the temperature, the point at which there is enough heat to make the fire. That is called the flash point that we discussed. And we also learned that fire is a good servant but a bad master, right? He is a good servant because as long as we are able to have control over fire, it serves our needs in very numerous ways, and we can use it for different purposes. And that was the reason why the writer here says that it is a good servant but not a good master. I've even cited some examples which I am not going to repeat again today, but I hope you remember. So you have to be wise with yourself that you use the things that are required for you, but you should not let them become your master, because one day your lives can be ruined if you do not know how to use the things that I mentioned in the earlier classes. Okay, and so likewise, if we do not have control over fire, if it spreads, we know how dangerous it can be. It can be very destructive, right? It's very destructive. You have seen with your own eyes, or you have heard from the news, you have even heard stories from your friends of how buildings get destroyed, of how offices get burned, and all these things are caused by fire. Sometimes it's accidents, sometimes it is because of the carelessness of some people that so many people have to go through, okay? So many people had to go through the pain, the problem, because a person is careless in that locality. This is what we have seen. We have discussed about the destructive elements and also the useful elements of fire, and today we are going to continue stretching on that point, okay? We have also discussed about how we should douse off the fire when there is oil. And if you put some water into a bottle of mustard oil, which is half, you all know, you might have experienced it, and you know that the oils will float on the upper part, right? That is because oil is lighter than water. And so in the case of fire, if there is an area with oils, okay, you cannot douse the fire with oil. You can think of a petrol pump, right? If you try to douse off the fire with water, the oil would just float on the surface of the water, and the water, we know water cannot be stopped unless you put something to block it, right? The water would just keep flowing, and in the process, as the oils would be on top of water, the fire would still continue burning because it will not sink under the water. That was one reason why we are always advised not to douse off a fire in the presence of oil, because instead of putting off the fire, though we always assume that water is the best thing to douse off fire, those things will not work. We have to use fire extinguishers, right? Those are things that we have learned. And when there is fire because of electric short circuit or anything related to that, if there, especially in the buildings, what we do, every house is attached with electrical wires. I don't have to be mentioning that again because you yourself know about this, right? Here in this case, you are not supposed to douse off the fire with water. Why? Because we know that when you put an electric wire into a bucket, okay, you will even get electric current shock, right? So the same thing with this. If a person is trying to throw water at a place where there is electrical fire, that person has very high chances of getting electric shock, because we know that it's a conductor, right? When a person tries to throw water at an electrical fire, that would be very dangerous for that person, because when the water goes in contact with the electrical wires, it will also come back to the person who is throwing the water. That is why we are always advised not to douse of fire when there is electrical fire. Okay, there should be some other means that we use. And not only this, we every year we see that there are thousands of rupees spent to prevent fire, because everybody knows that once a house catches fire, that becomes difficult for the inmates as well as the people around it. And that was the reason why the government always spends, and even individuals, we spend money in order to prevent fire. And there are again thousands of rupees spent just to get to know how to prevent. One, I want you to know this. One is to prevent fire, and one is to get knowledge. Okay, that means doing experiments to know how to prevent fire. This is what people have been doing. Though its usefulness has been discovered long back by early man, when electricity was not discovered, they first discovered fire, and then they began to use fire for so many domestic purposes. They also found out that cooked food is always better than the raw food, because they had been consuming only raw food before the discovery of fire, because at first they did not know that fire can be useful to them. Okay, so that is one thing that we have learned. And another one that I would like to read to all of you, I want you to follow me in page number 117, the first paragraph. We spend millions of rupees each year in fighting fires, and we spend more trying to find new ways of preventing fires from happening and getting out of control. On the whole, we have learned rather well to control fire and put it to good use in our everyday life. And so this is what we were talking about. Every year we spend a lot of money just to learn how to prevent fires and also to prevent it. And we have discussed in our previous class, in earlier days, when there were no good facilities to douse a fire, people will line up, form a chain of human beings, right? They will form a chain of human beings from the burning spot to a well or a pond, and then they will pass the water buckets. Instead of running to the pond and coming back, which is a wastage of an energy. When there are more people, they will just line up, reach the well, and then pass the bucket, because that is also easier, right? You can even think of that. Instead of you running to the pond and coming back, if there were 10 students, there were 10 persons with you, you can all line up, right? Because your energy will be saved, as well as there will be less time consumed, because instead of going and fetching again, another bucket will be there by the time one bucket is emptied. So this is what people have been doing in the earlier days. And even today, in some areas, especially the rural areas, when there is no fire brigades to help them, they would do this in this manner to douse off the fire. Okay, so these are the different ways that we use. And in the present day, modern equipments are procured. That means they are bought. Okay, there is a department called the Fire and Emergency Service. They always take care, and we can call them up anytime. We can call them up so that they will be at our service. Sometimes we are ignorant of what to do, and that's where we can even get into a big loss. Okay, the Fire and Emergency Service Department is always there, ready to help the public in any times of danger related to fire, but we do not approach them, and that is also one reason why they do not come forward. They will not know of what is happening. So we should be the one, as responsible students. You are already in class 7. No, by now you are not an adult yet, but you know what is right and what is wrong. And as a student, you should also educate your parents in doing these things. We have a lot of very good equipments. We have the water tankers, and we have the army personnels or the police personnels who would be ready at any time. They are always ready 24/7 to save the people, right? To save the public. And so in the modern day, instead of people lining up and fetching the water, we have also developed some equipments to douse off the fire. This is what we need to take advantage of, because they are at our service. If we don't call them, they will not come. And sometimes we are ignorant. We don't even have the numbers that we can call them up. So what we need to do is we should be the ones to take the initiative. Even if some of our parents are illiterate or not very well educated, we as students should come forward and take up these duties, right? Because we are being taught in the school, and this lesson will not be included in our syllabus if it is not going to be of any help to us. But the NCERT has given this topic in our book so that we, the class 7 students, can also come forward and act responsibly in any time of danger related to fire. It is not only about the benefits that we get, but it is also the distractions that a fire can cause, and that was one reason why this topic has been included in our lesson. And the fire brigade team, okay, they are also well trained in any area. They are also trained for first aid, because when there is fire, expectantly we will find some injuries. And so these people are not just police personnel who will come and help you to douse off the fire, but they also come with first aid. Okay, you know what is first aid, isn't it? The emergency medicines that you need at the moment when the doctors are not available. And so these people who are trained for the fire brigade team, they are also trained for administering first aid, and they know what to do. The basic things that they do are, they are able to nurse. Okay, they are able to nurse the burnt marks, the injuries caused by the burn, and also sometimes when you are trying to escape, right? When you are trying to escape, you might even have got injured. So they take care of those things, because it will take some time for you to reach the hospital. Though they are not medical practitioners, they are trained for this first aid administration. And so these are the things that they do. They also know how to put the electric current off, okay? Because as long as there is electricity in the house and the current is still there, that means there is a very big risk for all of us. That's why they are trained with all these things. And in the modern day, what people do is, when you build your house, the buildings, you have to know what is fireproof. There are some specific wires that you can use, though they may be a little bit expensive than the normal wires. You can use those things. So in any time of danger related to fire accidents, those will be very safe, and it is all for our safety. Sometimes we think only of the less expenditure that we would want to spend for our house, right? If you go for the cheap wires, that would be more beneficial for you in the short run, but in the long run, after some years, when a fire accident happens, you know, the whole building can be damaged just because you want to save a few thousands of rupees for yourself. That is one thing we need to keep in mind, and especially the big buildings. Some buildings are attached with water sprinklers, okay? So that anytime there is fire accident, those water sprinklers would just automatically start sprinkling water in order to stop it. So these are some equipments for a person building a big house. It is very important for all of us, because if you are trying to save a little bit of money, not willing to spend much, in the long run you may have to face a lot of losses. Because of the little amount that you save some years, the whole building may go down to ashes on the floor. That is one thing that we have learned from this lesson. And today, here we have completed one chapter. The previous class we continued with this, and by now I hope you will be able to solve the exercises that comes behind this chapter. So I want all of you to keep it in mind. But I would also like to leave you with a brief explanation on a poem, because we still got a little bit of time. So I would like to request all of you to turn to page number 123. Okay, 123. We will do that reading together once. Okay, it's a poem called Meadow Surprises. Okay, Meadow Surprises, written by Louis Brandt Phillips. I repeat, Meadow Surprises, written by Louis Brandt Phillips. And so, this Meadow Surprises, okay, I'm just adding this chapter because I don't want to leave you free for these few minutes. It will also help you, okay? I will give you the hint of this in the later classes. If we have another class, we will also try to do things in detail. You know what is a meadow? Meadows are usually grasslands, right? The synonym can be grasslands, so you can keep that in your mind. It's a grassland where you will find a lot of things. Here, our poet tries to let us understand and see the beauty of nature. Sometimes we see the beauty of nature, but we don't really realize it, isn't it? So he presents to us an idea of how beautiful it is to walk around a meadow with the natural beauty. You can think of the flowers blooming, the wildflowers which we do not plant at home, right? You can see that there will be mounds of ants. The mounds of ants will be there. When ants build their houses underground, they will put some soil on top of that. Those are called the mounds, right? And so in this, as we walk across the meadow, what we usually see is there is a lot of surprises when that we do not really put it into consideration. I'll read the first verse for all of us. We have some verses following it, but I will not be doing all of that, okay? Meadows have surprises. You can find them if you look. Walk softly through the velvet grass and listen by the brook. You can imagine. If you just close your eyes someday and think of a meadow, imagine the velvet grasses. The grasses which are short and it's not very tall, there will be no trees around. And so if you walk around, what do you see? You can hear the rivers flowing down, right? You can hear the rivers flowing down. And the poet also brings the flower dandelion. Dandelion is a flower, yellowish in color, and when it dries, after the blooming season is off, it dries, okay? It dries off, and with a slight blow of air onto it, you will see the dandelion's flowers, okay? The dandelion's flowers flying in the air as if they were parachutes, okay? And you will see them. That it's very interesting, which we do not realize the beauty of nature that we see in our everyday life. A rabbit would be there hiding among the grasses. It would be hiding among the grasses. We do not see unless it starts hopping, right? A rabbit hops, isn't it? Sometimes they keep hopping, and those sights are a sight to behold, okay? It's a nice thing that they will be running around happily. And we should also realize the ants would be there and all kinds of creatures, the flowers coming together, the rivers flowing by. What a sight of beauty it would be. So the poet must be a very creative poet that he saw the beauty of the very natural things, okay? For a human being, for a normal human being, sometimes we do not consider the beauty that we see every day because it's always around us, right? You might go and see a beautiful valley filled with flowers. To find that very beautiful is a common thing for all of us. But sometimes we do not appreciate the things that are around us. And so the poet here is also reminding us to appreciate the ordinary and the common things around you. It may be in terms of your friends, right? Your parents, your brothers and your sisters. You do not really see the beauty of things which are always present around you. But if you look into the quality of a friend, you can imagine. Or if a friend suddenly leaves you, you will slowly start realizing the good qualities that you see in that particular friend. That is what the poet is also making us understand in the form of meadows. He talks about the ants, he talks about the bees that are buzzing around, he talks about the beautiful flowers. Who would consider a dandelion flower to be a beautiful flower, right? It's just an ordinary flower that blooms around. But when we really observe it, when it gets dried off and you blow it, a slight movement would blow it into the air, which appears like a parachute. So though in this short span of time, I've added this poem. Why? Because I will want you to start appreciating the things that are around you. Though the poem has not been explained detailedly, I hope by one more reading. It's a very simple poem written in simple languages that you all could understand. But the main and underlying message that you will find in this poem is to start learning to appreciate the common things, the ordinary things that are around you. Then you will see how beautiful and how precious they would appear to your eyes. And with this, we are going to end our class for today. Thank you so much for tuning in.